The last message she ever sent me was, "I'll text you when I get home." She never did. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. My calls went unanswered, my messages stayed unread, and every piece of hope I held on to slowly disappeared. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason, something that explained why the woman who once promised to never leave suddenly erased me from her life without a single goodbye. Then one bright afternoon, while scrolling through social media during my lunch break, I saw a wedding photo that shattered everything I believed. Standing there in a white dress, smiling brighter than I had ever seen before, was the woman who had completely disappeared from my world. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that every story has two sides, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind us what it truly means to be human. My name is Corin, and until that day, I honestly believed my life was following the path I had always imagined. I worked as an architectural designer in a busy downtown office where every day looked almost identical. Morning coffee, project meetings, construction plans, and late afternoon walks to the nearby park where I usually met my girlfriend Mireya. She had an incredible talent for making ordinary moments feel unforgettable, whether we were eating sandwiches on a park bench or watching pigeons fly across the fountain. Somehow every afternoon felt like the beginning of another beautiful chapter. People often say you know when you've found the right person. I never believed those words until I met her. She remembered every little detail about me. She knew how I liked my coffee, the songs that calmed my anxiety, and the dreams I rarely shared with anyone else. She encouraged me whenever I doubted myself and celebrated every small victory as if it were her own. Our families had started talking. Our friends joked that we would probably get married before anyone else in our group. Everything pointed toward a future that seemed almost guaranteed. Then without warning, everything vanished. The first day she didn't answer, I assumed she had simply been busy. The second day I became worried. By the fourth day, panic had replaced confusion. I drove to her apartment after work, only to discover it completely empty. The curtains were gone. The mailbox had been cleared. Even the name on the apartment directory had been removed. Her landlord simply said she had moved out suddenly. Her phone remained disconnected. Her social media profiles disappeared. Her closest friends claimed they had no idea where she had gone. It felt as though someone had erased her existence overnight. For months I searched for answers instead of accepting reality. Every unfamiliar face in a crowd made me stop walking. Every woman with similar hair made my heart race for a second, before disappointment settled in again. I replayed every conversation we had ever shared, searching for some hidden clue I had somehow ignored. Was she unhappy?
Had I failed her?
Did someone convince her to leave? Or had she simply stopped loving me without ever telling me? Those questions became heavier than anything I had ever carried. My work suffered. I stopped meeting friends. I canceled family gatherings because pretending to smile became exhausting. Even simple things like cooking dinner or watching television reminded me of memories that refused to fade. The apartment we had decorated together suddenly felt enormous and painfully quiet. One sunny Saturday afternoon, nearly 10 months after she disappeared, I was sitting inside a neighborhood cafe trying to force myself back into a normal routine. The place was crowded with families enjoying lunch, children laughing near the bakery counter, and couples planning weekend trips. Life had continued for everyone else while mine still felt frozen. Without thinking, I opened my phone and started scrolling through old photographs before switching over to social media. That was when everything changed. One of our mutual college acquaintances had uploaded an album titled, "A Perfect Wedding Weekend." Curious more than anything else, I tapped it. The first picture showed flowers. The second showed guests. Then came the third photograph. My hands immediately started shaking. There she was, Mireya, standing beside another man in a perfectly fitted wedding dress, smiling as sunlight poured across her face. The date beneath the photo showed the wedding had happened only 2 days earlier. I couldn't breathe. The cafe around me disappeared into silence. The conversations, the music, the clinking coffee cups all faded until only that single photograph remained. My entire body felt numb, while my heart pounded harder than it ever had before. For several minutes, I simply stared. I zoomed in, then out, again and again. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe she had a twin. Maybe it wasn't really her. But every smile, every tiny freckle near her eye, every strand of dark hair confirmed the impossible truth. She had married someone else, without ever saying goodbye. I left the cafe without finishing my meal and wandered through downtown streets beneath the bright afternoon sun. The city looked exactly the same, yet everything inside me had changed again. Losing someone is painful. Believing you were abandoned for someone else hurts in an entirely different way. Over the following week, I became obsessed with understanding what had happened. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even know whether I wanted an apology. I simply wanted the truth. Eventually, I found the wedding photographer's public website. There were dozens of beautiful daytime photographs from the ceremony. Family members laughed beneath giant oak trees. Children chased bubbles across green grass. Guests danced under clear blue skies. Then I noticed something unexpected. In almost every picture, Mireia smiled politely, but her eyes never truly smiled. As strange as it sounded, I knew that expression better than anyone. Whenever she forced herself to appear happy during difficult moments, there was always a quiet sadness hidden behind her eyes. That single observation planted a seed of doubt inside me. Several days later, something happened that I never expected. I received a handwritten envelope without a return address. Inside was a single folded letter. The handwriting belonged to Mireia. My hands trembled before I even opened it. The letter began with the words I had spent nearly a year waiting to hear. "I'm sorry." As I continued reading, every assumption I had made slowly began falling apart. Nearly a year earlier, her father had suffered a devastating financial collapse after his business partner disappeared with enormous debts. Their family home was at risk of being taken away, and her younger brother's medical treatment suddenly became impossible to afford. At the same time, an influential businessman named Adrian entered their lives. He had known her family for years. He offered to pay every debt. He arranged medical care. He promised to protect her parents. But there was one condition. She had to marry his son. Her parents begged her to refuse. She refused at first, again and again. Then doctors warned that delaying her brother's treatment could permanently affect his health. According to the letter, she believed disappearing from my life would hurt me less than watching her choose someone else, for reasons I would never understand. She convinced herself I would eventually hate her and move on. She believed silence would protect me. Instead, it destroyed both of us. Reading those pages felt like watching two completely different stories collide. The woman I believed had betrayed me had actually sacrificed everything she wanted because she thought saving her family mattered more than her own happiness. The letter never asked for forgiveness. It never asked me to come back. Near the end, she simply wrote that seeing me continue living a happy life would finally allow her to believe her sacrifice meant something. For several days, I carried that letter everywhere. I visited the same park where we used to spend afternoons together. Children still chased birds around the fountain. Office workers still hurried past during lunch. The world looked exactly as it had before. Only now I understood how little we truly know about another person's private battles. Pain often hides behind smiles. Sacrifices remain invisible. People disappear for reasons we could never imagine. Months passed. Instead of allowing bitterness to define me, I slowly rebuilt the life I had almost abandoned. I focused on my career again. I started volunteering on weekends, helping renovate community centers for families who couldn't afford repairs. Every completed project reminded me that broken things could become beautiful again with patience and care. One warm spring afternoon, nearly 2 years after receiving the letter, I attended the opening ceremony for one of those community buildings. As guests walked through the entrance, I noticed a familiar face standing quietly among the crowd. It was Mireia. She looked older, tired, but peaceful. Our eyes met across the courtyard. Neither of us rushed forward. Neither of us cried. We simply shared a quiet smile filled with memories that words could never fully explain. She was no longer wearing a wedding ring. I never asked why. She never explained. Some answers were no longer necessary. We spoke only briefly about our families, our work, and how life had changed us. Before leaving, she thanked me for becoming the kind of man she always believed I could become. As she walked away beneath the bright afternoon sunlight, I realized something surprising. The ache inside my heart had finally disappeared. Not because I had forgotten, not because the past no longer mattered, but because forgiveness had quietly replaced resentment. Sometimes closure doesn't arrive through dramatic reunions or impossible endings. Sometimes it arrives through understanding, through compassion, through accepting that life writes chapters we never expected. Before we reach the end of this story, tell us in the comments, if someone disappeared from your life without explanation, would you wait for the truth or move on? That single question might help someone reading the comments who is carrying the same invisible pain. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of someone you once loved, or encouraged you to choose forgiveness over anger, please like this video. Leave your thoughts below. Share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Your support allows these meaningful stories to reach people who may need them the most. As I walked home beneath the golden afternoon sky, I finally understood that not every love story is meant to end with two people together. Some exist to teach us resilience. Some teach sacrifice. Others teach forgiveness.